The missing person posters have started to yellow and curl at the edges. Daniel's face stares out from every telephone pole on 2nd Street. That same photo from our last anniversary dinner at Parker's Lighthouse. 6 months since he walked out of our condo and vanished into the Pacific morning fog. The police stopped actively searching after month 3. His mother still calls me every Sunday, asking if I've heard anything, if there's been any activity on his credit cards, if maybe today will be the day her son comes home. I tell her no. I tell her I'm praying. I tell her I miss him too. What I don't tell her is that I'm the reason he's gone. That the last words he said to me were so quiet I almost missed them. You've killed us all, Vanessa. Every last one of us. It started, like most disasters, with something small. A fight about money on a Tuesday evening in March, the kind of argument married couples have 1,000 times. Daniel had been going through our credit card statements. His forehead creased in that way that meant bad news was coming. $400 at Nordstrom? He looked up from his laptop, genuinely confused. Vanessa, we talked about this. We're supposed to be saving for the house down payment. I set down my wine glass, already defensive. It was for your company dinner. You wanted me to look nice for the partners. That dinner was 2 months ago. This charge is from last week. Caught. I'd bought a dress for my cousin's engagement party, justified it to myself as necessary, figured Daniel wouldn't notice one charge among hundreds. But Daniel noticed everything. It was what made him such a good financial advisor and such an exhausting husband. God, Daniel, it's one dress. I work too. I contribute. I'm allowed to buy myself something nice once in a while without getting a lecture. It's not about permission. He rubbed his temples, that gesture I'd grown to hate. It's about the plan. We agreed. 6 more months of strict saving and we'd have enough for the down payment on the Manhattan beach house. Every unnecessary purchase pushes that back. Unnecessary? I stood up, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Like your golf membership? Like the new clubs you had to have? Those were necessary? I network on that course. Half my clients come from... Spare me. I was fully wound up now, righteous indignation masking my guilt. You nickel and dime every dollar I spend while you and your father play country club kings every weekend. Must be nice to be a Walker man. Rules for you, but not for me. Something shifted in his face. Careful, Vanessa. Careful of what? The truth. Your precious father gets to throw money around like it's nothing. That ridiculous boat, the place in Big Bear he uses twice a year, flying to Vegas whenever he feels like it. But I buy one dress and suddenly I'm fiscally irresponsible. My father earned his money. Built his business from nothing. He can spend it however he... And I didn't earn mine. That's what you're saying? You're twisting my words. No, I'm hearing them clearly for the first time. You think I'm some ungrateful gold digger spending the Walker family fortune. Daniel closed his laptop with a snap. I never said that. You didn't have to. I was spiraling now, mixing truth with drama, the wine making me reckless. Poor Vanessa from Riverside, lucky to marry into the mighty Walker dynasty. Should just shut up and be grateful, right? You're being ridiculous. Am I? Then why does your mother still introduce me as Daniel's wife after 4 years? Why does your sister always make those little comments about my parents' house? Why does your father look at me like I'm some employee who needs to prove she deserves her position? That's not... Daniel stood, his calm cracking. My family has been nothing but welcoming to you. My parents paid for our entire wedding. My father gave me the money for your engagement ring. They've accepted you completely. Accepted me? Like I'm some charity case who should kiss their feet in gratitude? Jesus, Vanessa, where is this coming from? I ask about one credit card charge and suddenly my whole family are villains. Maybe I'm just tired of feeling like I need to apologize for existing in your perfect Walker world. Daniel's face went cold. You want to know what I really think? I think you're ungrateful. I think you take everything my family has done for us, for you, And you twist it into some kind of insult because you can't stand feeling indebted to anyone. You'd rather paint us as snobs than admit that maybe, just maybe, you're the one with the problem. The words hung between us like a blade. Ungrateful. There it was, what he really thought of me. Get out, I said quietly. This is my home too. Then I'll leave. I grabbed my purse and keys. Enjoy your spreadsheets. I'm sure they'll keep you warm tonight. I drove to the Marriott by the airport, checking in with the same credit card he'd been questioning. Let him see that charge. Let him add it to his precious calculations. I lay on the hotel bed, anger burning through me like acid. Ungrateful. After everything I'd given up for him, everything I'd become to fit into his world, I was ungrateful. My phone buzzed with texts from Daniel. Apologies at first, then concern, then frustration when I didn't respond. I turned it off and opened the minibar, letting overpriced wine fuel my rage. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Belmont Shore. I needed to walk, to think, to figure out how to go back to that condo and pretend those words hadn't changed everything. The morning was gray and cool, marine layer thick enough to muffle sound. I bought coffee from a shop on 2nd Street and wandered down to the beach. That's where I saw him. Richard Walker, my father-in-law, sitting alone on a bench facing the ocean. He was wearing running clothes but wasn't running, just staring at the waves like they might have answers to questions he hadn't asked. I almost walked past, should have walked past, but something made me stop. Richard? He startled, then smiled when he saw me. Not his usual boardroom smile, something softer and sadder. Vanessa, what brings you out here so early? Needed some air. You? Same. He patted the bench beside him. Caroline's at her sister's for the week. House feels too big when she's gone. I sat down, maintaining careful distance. We'd never been alone together, not really. Family dinners, holiday gatherings, always with buffers between us. Up close, I could see the silver threading through his hair, the lines around his eyes that Daniel would probably inherit someday. Daniel told me about your fight, he said quietly. He stayed at our house last night. Humiliation burned through me. I'm sure he gave you all the details. How his ungrateful wife doesn't appreciate the Walker family generosity. Richard was quiet for a moment. He said he was too harsh. That he didn't mean it. Yes, he did. Maybe it's the first honest thing he's said to me in years. You don't believe that. Don't I? I turned to face him. You all think it. Poor Vanessa from the wrong side of the tracks should be grateful she landed a Walker. Well, maybe I am ungrateful. Maybe I'm tired of being made to feel like I should genuflect every time one of you acknowledges my existence. Richard studied me with those gray eyes Daniel inherited. Is that really how we make you feel? You want honesty? Yes. Your wife treats me like the help. Your daughter acts like I'm contagious. And you look at me like I'm some problem you need to solve. Like I'm not good enough for your precious son. That's not true, isn't it? He sighed, looking back at the ocean. I've been married to Caroline for 35 years. Want to know a secret? Her father thought I wasn't good enough for her either. Called me a grease monkey who got lucky. I was rebuilding transmissions in a garage in San Pedro when I met her. Took me 15 years to prove him wrong. I blinked, surprised. The Richard Walker I knew had always been power and success personified. I didn't know that. Not something we advertise. The Walker Empire built from nothing? Makes a better story if you leave out the part where nothing meant sleeping in the shop and eating ramen for 2 years. He smiled ruefully. Caroline's father died still thinking she married beneath her. Some fights you can't win. But you tried anyway. I was young and stupid and in love. Thought if I made enough money, achieved enough success, it would change how they saw me. You know what I learned? The people who matter don't need you to prove anything. and the ones who need proof will never have enough. We sat in comfortable silence, watching joggers pass with their dogs. The marine layer was starting to burn off, revealing patches of blue sky. "I don't think you're ungrateful," Richard said finally. "I think you're proud." "There's a difference." Daniel doesn't see it that way. Daniel's young. He hasn't learned yet that the people we love don't need to be grateful for that love. They just need to receive it. He stood, stretching. "I should go. Caroline calls at 9 when she's at her sister's. If I don't answer, she'll think I've been kidnapped." He started to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Vanessa, I've never thought you weren't good enough." "I've wondered sometimes if we were good enough for you. A girl who stands her ground the way you do. That's not ungrateful. That's strength. Don't let anyone, not even my son, convince you otherwise." He jogged away, leaving me on the bench with tears I couldn't explain. An hour later, I drove home to find Daniel waiting with flowers and apologies. We made up the way couples do, with promises to do better and be better. But something had shifted that morning on the beach. A door had opened that should have stayed closed. I started running in the mornings. The same path, the same time, always ending at the same bench. Richard was there more often than not. Caroline still at her sister's dealing with some family drama. We'd sit and talk, about nothing at first. The weather, the news, safe topics. But gradually the conversations deepened. He told me about building his business, the mistakes he'd made, the nights he'd wondered if success was worth what it cost. I told him about growing up in Riverside, about parents who worked 2 jobs each and still couldn't afford college tuition, about the chip on my shoulder that I carried like armor. He listened without judgment, without the careful distance I'd grown accustomed to from the Walker family. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said one morning. "So determined to prove everyone wrong that you forget to prove yourself right." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're so busy fighting against what you think people expect that you don't know what you actually want." "I want respect." "No, you want revenge. There's a difference." I should have been offended. Instead, I laughed. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I do want to show everyone who ever looked down on me that they were wrong." "And then what?" "When you've proved your point, what's left?" I didn't have an answer. The morning conversations became a ritual. Daniel left for work at 7. I'd leave at 7:30 for my run. He never questioned it, happy that I was exercising, that I seemed calmer. The fights about money stopped. I was playing a different game now, though I couldn't have said what the rules were. The shift happened gradually. Richard's hand on my shoulder when I cried about a work situation. My hand on his knee when he talked about Caroline's increasing absence. The space between us on the bench shrinking day by day. We were playing with fire and calling it friendship, telling ourselves that these morning conversations were innocent. "I have to go to San Francisco next week," he told me one April morning. "Conference, 4 days." "That'll be nice." Change of scenery. "Come with me." The words landed between us like a grenade. I stared at the ocean, afraid to look at him. "Richard, I know it's wrong. I know I'm old enough to be your father. I know you're married to my son. I know all of it. But Vanessa, I haven't felt this alive in years. You make me remember who I was before I became Richard Walker. Success story. When I'm with you, I'm just Rick from San Pedro who thinks he can conquer the world." This is insane. Is it? We're just talking. 2 friends, separate rooms, happens to be the same city. Nothing has to happen that we don't want to happen. I should have said no. Should have run back to my car and never returned to that bench. Instead, I heard myself saying, "I'll think about it." I told Daniel I was going to a dental conference. He barely looked up from his laptop, just reminded me to use the rewards credit card for the miles. I packed carefully, professionally, nothing that suggested anything other than a work trip. But my hands shook as I zipped the suitcase. The flight to San Francisco was the longest hour and a half of my life. Richard had booked first class, separate seats to avoid suspicion. I saw him 4 rows ahead, reading a financial magazine like this was any other business trip, like we weren't about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We took separate cars to the hotel. The St. Regis, because of course Richard Walker wouldn't stay anywhere less. My room was on the 14th floor. His was on the 20th. We'd agreed to meet for dinner, just talking, just friends in the same city by coincidence. I lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of pacing my room, staring at the city lights, trying to talk myself out of what I was about to do. Not because I loved Daniel. I'd realized that morning on the beach that whatever love we'd had curdled into obligation. Not because it was wrong. I'd passed caring about right and wrong somewhere over Los Angeles. But because I knew this was about more than desire or connection or any of the lies we tell ourselves. This was about revenge. Richard had been right about that. And revenge, I was learning, was a hunger that grew with feeding. I knocked on his door at 9:47 p.m. He answered like he'd been waiting, like he knew I'd come. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say that our presence didn't already admit. That first kiss tasted like expensive whiskey and terrible decisions. His hands were older than Daniel's, but surer, more certain of what they wanted. When he pressed me against the hotel window, city lights blurring below us, I felt powerful in a way I'd never experienced. Here was Richard Walker, patriarch of the family that had made me feel small, wanting me with a desperation that bordered on worship. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against my neck. "Tell me this is wrong." "It is wrong," I said, pulling him closer. "Everything about this is wrong." We fell into his bed like we were falling off a cliff, knowing the crash was coming but unable to care about anything but the sensation of flight. Every touch was a betrayal, every kiss a declaration of war against the life we'd built. He said my name like a prayer, like a confession, like an apology for 35 years of being someone else's husband. Afterward, we lay in the tangle of Egyptian cotton and terrible choices, not touching, both understanding that contact would make it real in a way we weren't ready for. "What have we done?" Richard asked the ceiling. "Proved Daniel right." "I am ungrateful." "This isn't about gratitude." "No?" "Then what's it about?" He turned to look at me, and I saw my own desperate confusion reflected in his eyes. "I don't know. I just know that for the first time in 20 years I feel like myself again. Is that worth destroying everything? I don't know. But I can't seem to stop." We spent 3 days pretending to attend our respective conferences while actually rarely leaving his room. Room service trays piled up outside the door. We talked between desperate encounters, sharing secrets that should have stayed buried. He told me about Caroline's affairs, plural, that everyone pretended not to know about. I told him about the resentment that had been eating me alive since I'd said "I do" in a dress his money had paid for. "We're terrible people," I said on the last morning, watching fog roll over the bay. "Yes," he agreed. "We are." "I don't want to go back." "Neither do I, but we will. We'll go back and pretend this never happened and slowly go insane from the pretending." He was wrong. We didn't pretend it never happened. We pretended it wasn't continuing to happen. The morning runs resumed. Now they were just cover. Thin excuses to meet at beach motels, in his office after hours, in my car in parking structures when the need became too urgent to wait. We were addicts, both of us, hooked on the combination of wrong and right that made every encounter feel like victory and defeat at once. Daniel noticed nothing. Or maybe he noticed and chose not to see. His father and his wife had become friends. How wonderful. Family dinners became exercises in performance art, Richard and I carefully never touching, never quite meeting eyes, while Caroline drank her wine and Daniel talked about mortgage rates. "I'm glad you two are getting along better," Daniel said one night as we drove home from another excruciating family dinner. "Dad seems happier lately. Maybe you were good for him." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The end came, as it had to, with brutal suddenness. Caroline's sister's crisis resolved. She returned home earlier than expected. Richard and I were in his home office, supposedly reviewing some investments he thought might interest me. In reality, I was on his desk, my skirt around my waist, when we heard the front door open. "Richard? Are you home?" We froze like guilty teenagers. I scrambled to fix my clothes while Richard buttoned his shirt with shaking hands. By the time Caroline reached the office, we were sitting on opposite sides of his desk, investment portfolios spread between us like props. But Caroline Walker hadn't survived 35 years of marriage by being stupid. She took in the scene, my flushed face, Richard's guilty eyes, the charge in the air between us, and knew. "Vanessa," she said calmly, "I think you should leave." I gathered my things and fled, leaving Richard to face whatever came next. I drove home in a haze, knowing that the bomb had finally detonated and waiting for the shrapnel to hit. Daniel was waiting in our living room, not angry, not yet, just confused. "My mother called," he said. "She was hysterical, said something about Dad and you, but it didn't make sense. Vanessa, what's going on?" I could have lied. Could have played innocent, made Caroline out to be paranoid or mistaken. Instead, I sat down across from him and told him the truth. All of it. Every meeting, every encounter, every betrayal. I watched his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, rage, and finally, something worse than all of them, complete shutdown. When I finished, he was silent for so long I wondered if he'd heard me. Then he stood, walked to our bedroom, and began packing a bag with mechanical precision. "Daniel, say something." He paused, not looking at me. "You want to know the funny thing?" I could have forgiven an affair. People make mistakes, give in to temptation. I could have even understood if you'd fallen in love with someone else. But my father? The man who gave us everything? He didn't give me anything. You all made sure I knew that everything came with strings, with expectations, with the constant reminder that I should be grateful. "Stop." He turned to face me and I barely recognized him. "Just stop. You want to paint yourself as some victim of the Walker family? Fine. But we both know what this really was. You wanted to hurt me in the worst way possible and you found it. Congratulations, Vanessa. You won." He zipped his bag and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "I don't know. Away. I can't look at you. I can't be in this place where you and he..." He shuddered. "You've killed us all, Vanessa. Every last one of us." Those were the last words he ever said to me. Daniel walked out our door at 11:47 p.m. on May 15th. His car was found abandoned at the Seal Beach Pier 2 days later, keys still in the ignition. Security footage showed him walking onto the pier around midnight and never walking off. The police searched for weeks. Coast Guard divers found nothing. He'd simply vanished into the Pacific, taking with him any chance of redemption or resolution. Richard fell apart. The affair, the betrayal of his son, the guilt. It consumed him. He confessed everything to Caroline in some misguided attempt at penance. She filed for divorce within a week, taking half of everything he'd built. He started drinking, stopped going to the office, stopped running on the beach. The last time I saw him, he looked like he'd aged 20 years in 6 months. "Are you happy?" he asked me. We'd run into each other at a gas station, the kind of mundane meeting that felt like cosmic punishment. Was it worth it? I couldn't answer because I didn't know. Was I happy? Number. Was I satisfied? Also number. I'd burned down 3 generations of Walkers and stood in the ashes feeling nothing but empty. Caroline took her settlement and moved to Portland to be near her sister. She sent me one email before she left. "I hope you're satisfied." You wanted to prove you were good enough for the Walkers? Congratulations. You destroyed us as thoroughly as any insider could. Well played. Richard lost the business 6 months after Daniel disappeared. Drinking and guilt make poor business partners. The last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in San Pedro, right back where he started all those years ago. And me? I still live in the same condo, though I don't know why. Maybe because it's the last place Daniel was. Maybe because I'm punishing myself. Maybe because I don't know where else to go. I work, I come home, I drink wine, I try not to think about the magnitude of what I've done. The missing person posters are starting to fade. Daniel's mother, former mother-in-law, still calls every Sunday. I should stop answering, but I can't. Her voice is the only connection I have left to the life I destroyed. "Any news?" she asks. "No," I say, nothing. I keep thinking he'll walk through my door. Silly, isn't it? Not silly at all. Richard won't talk about it. Won't talk about Daniel, won't talk about what happened. He just drinks and stares at old photos. I've lost them both, haven't I? I'm sorry, Caroline. I'm so sorry. I know you are, dear. We all are. She hangs up, and I'm alone again with my guilt and my empty victory. I wanted to prove I wasn't ungrateful. Instead, I proved that gratitude and revenge are just different faces of the same bitter coin. You can't have one without the other, can't destroy without creating absence, can't win without losing everything that mattered. Sometimes I walk to the pier where they found Daniel's car. I stand where he must have stood, looking at the dark water, and wonder what he was thinking in those last moments. Was he planning to jump? Did he slip? Did he simply walk into the fog and decide not to come back? I'll never know. That's my punishment, the not knowing, the questions that will follow me forever. The ghost of a man who loved me imperfectly but truly, who I destroyed because I couldn't stand being called ungrateful. The truth is, I was ungrateful. Ungrateful for a husband who noticed my spending only because he was planning our future. Ungrateful for in-laws who welcomed me, even if it was awkwardly. Ungrateful for a life that was ordinary, stable, and real. I wanted to be seen as more than I was, and in the process, I became so much less. Daniel was right about one thing. I did win. I won the worst kind of victory, the kind that leaves you alone with your prize, wondering if the cost was written in small print you refused to read. I beat the walkers at their own game by refusing to play by any rules at all. But when you burn down the whole board, you don't get to claim the ashes as treasure. The marine layer is thick tonight, rolling in from the ocean like a blanket of forgetting. I pour another glass of wine and stand on our balcony, my balcony, watching the fog erase the world. Somewhere out there, Daniel may be floating in the currents, or maybe he's living under another name in another city, finally free of all of us. I'll never know. What I do know is this. I slept with my husband's father out of spite, and spite is a hunger that devours the feeder first. I wanted to prove I was worthy of respect, and instead proved I was worthy of exactly what I got, nothing but the echo of my own choices, and the silence of everyone I claimed to love. The fog swallows the city whole, and I let it. In the morning, the sun will burn it off and reveal what's left. But tonight, I'll pretend that the fog can erase more than just the view. I'll pretend that somewhere in that gray absence, forgiveness is waiting. I'll pretend, knowing it's a lie because the truth is too heavy to carry and too sharp to hold. Daniel called me ungrateful. He was right. I just wish I'd been grateful enough to know it before I proved him right in the worst possible way. Before I killed us all, just like he said. The wine is gone. The fog is complete. And somewhere in Long Beach, 3 generations of walkers are learning what I taught them. That gratitude and revenge are prices we pay for the same bitter meal, and the bill always comes due in the end.